So we have a few things. Yeah. So RT is being banned across Europe. They're being censored off of YouTube, and we have so Radio Free Amanda had said we have to shut down RT America because it's Russian propaganda. Meanwhile, the White House is briefing TikTok influencers on how to cover Ukraine. Now this one's particularly interesting.
I remember this one, yeah.
Because it's always like the New York Times and Al Jazeera. They're always coming
CBC.
after me. Yeah, they're coming after me like, oh, how are you influenced by the Chinese government?
AP, Associated Press.
I'm not like
Times.
these are my views. I don't work for anybody. And here you have it right in front of their faces, but these guys aren't going to get attacked as much.
Right.
As, and even when they write about it, they write about it in a positive way. It's like, oh yeah, this is really good. It's an educational session.
You know what, funny that you're saying that, when they take the attacks. I made a video on an island in Sanya. Hainan Island.
Yep.
And I got contacted by the Associated Press. Did Evergrande fund you to make this? And if there's something that I can put out to the media there, and to the journalists, the educated journalists and the approved journalists, whether they're working for their government organizations, you are putting content creators' lives at risk.
I would say at bare minimum, it's livelihoods. If I was in the West,
sure, livelihoods too.
If these outlets were writing about me, oh, he's Chinese government connected or whatever, I mean that would seriously affect my ability to operate or to get a job or to do business in the West. If I actually cared about that or I relied on doing that, and in some ways I do, so it does have an impact. These are the mechanisms that silence people. And whatever, if you want to say, well, we're just doing journalism, at least do it honestly. With what CBC did to me was they deliberately cut out 3.5 seconds from a half-an-hour interview to make it look like I was admitting that I was part of this campaign they were doing. They said they wrote a correction about after on their website, but the damage is done.
Yeah.
And they're still selling that clip through news aggregators to other news outlets, and it's showing up elsewhere. And they said, "Oh, this correction will show up everywhere." No, it doesn't show up everywhere. They're still selling,
But yeah, you're right on that.
Yeah.
And there's on the flip side, there's channels that are built on hate and racism, and I think that eventually in time, channels like that are fueled, whether it's for financial gain or whether it's for whatever, they always make a mistake. And eventually, they get deplatformed.
Honing in on going back to the media stuff, I'll read a few other tweets that are really interesting and relevant to that. So Richard Medhurst says, the West doesn't need state media. It has corporations that own both the state and the media, much more potent and dangerous. Which is quite interesting when you think about it. It's all wrapped up together. And a lot of these conflicts are corporately driven. I remember Julian Assange, before he was arrested, talking about how, the war in Afghanistan, nobody needs to win the war in Afghanistan per se. They could continue going and going and going, but the arms manufacturers win. They're continually washing public money into the arms of these multinational arms manufacturers, who in turn sponsor, senators and stuff like that. They donate to the senators. It's the most scary, ridiculous conflict of interest ever, which has obvious consequences to war. Caitlin Johnston again once says, RT has been banned by U.S. allies, Australia, Germany, and Poland, and the political media class is calling for its total obliteration. When really all you'd have to do to kill RT is simply allow leftists and anti-war opinions on Western mass media. You'd steal their entire audience. So, this is a good point, because it's not a matter of just getting rid of RT. It's about deplatforming people like Patrick Lantat, or demonetizing him and outright removing other people. I'll just go through a few more here. Andy Borum, our friend in Shanghai. Russia media is banned as propaganda, but Ukraine's fake news is okay because it's important myth-making that builds morale. And that was retweeting a New York Times story talking about the viral stories of the various fake stories and saying that, but it's a part of Ukraine's plan and it's a good thing to keep morale high. So it's not a matter of banning disinformation. It's about, obviously, it's narrative control. One final one before we talk about this a little bit more. Jackson Hinkle says, YouTube would have banned people who questioned WMD in Iraq in the lead up to the U.S. invasion. Yeah. I mean, it's so true. That's exactly what would have happened. Yeah. And that's the danger with what they're doing. But, it's not only online also. There was a story of a 65-year-old substitute teacher and journalist who was suspended from teaching in Arlington for giving his students a balanced perspective on the Russian-Ukraine conflict. Yeah. And I read what his statement was. It was really quite tame. But This is when stuff like you're talking about, stuff that you do, you're not necessarily putting it on your channel right now, but going out there and listening to these kinds of people becomes way more important.
Yeah, of course. You know, and the other thing is that right now, you know, I'm not putting it on my channel, but I know guys like Patrick that I reach out to other content creators and say, listen, this fits the content to your channel. Do you want to talk to this guy? You know, he will give your audience another side to listen to. And that's how I can be helpful. I want to add to that, you know, your tweets that you're reading. I remember watching a Australian program where a student came up and they kicked him off the show because he had an opinion. I'm not sure if you saw that.
I saw that.
They asked him to leave the show. Now, what I would probably do in that situation as a content creator is I'd find out who that young man was that was asked to leave the show and get him on the show so he can talk.
All right.
Silencing people, shutting people down and not giving them the opportunity to at least give their opinion or their experience or their, you know, how do we know that that young man that was on the show maybe had best friends that lived in the Donetsk People's Republic? Because what he was telling, you know, and I agree with you, Daniel, that, you know, we're not condoning what's happened down in that region at all. But for God's sakes, please allow the people, the viewers, where, you know, most viewers can pretty much come up with their own opinion if they are given a fair way to do it. And right now it's unfortunate.
I mean, ordinary Russians, I mean, you imagine what it must be like for a Russian who lives overseas who has a different perspective. And like that guy on the show, they don't even want to hear from them. They want to kick them off of their shows. They don't want to say, well, why does this guy have a different perspective? So that's for Russians who are sympathetic towards Russia's position. Russians who just want to be Russians without anything political in the West are targeted too. You had like football players who are demanded to condemn Putin. You had the conductor in
Paralympic
the Netherlands
that were asked to leave from Russia.
Yeah, the conductor or was given 24 hours to condemn Putin or lose his job, and he lost his job. Cats, for goodness sake, cats that were born in Russia were
and don't
banned.
Forget, if you're Belarusian too, they're going to throw you on there under the bus as well.
Yeah, but the cats that they were born in Russia, you couldn't be added to this registry, this cat registry anymore. Wow. I just watched something this morning, which was what's the Tonight Show? Trevor Noah, or whatever it's called. He was making fun of Russian TikTokers, Russian influencers, who were angry that Chanel was refusing to sell bags to overseas Russians, to Russians overseas, or they had to promise that they weren't going to take it back to Russia. And so some Russian influencers were angry about that, and they started cutting up their bags. Might not be the best thing to do, but he was making fun of them, saying, oh, that's really high on my list, Russian influencers. No, that's a really big issue. Racism, racially targeting people and saying, no, you can't come in my shop. You can't buy my product because I'm Russian. This is like, we're going back in the past. Like, how can people not know that this kind of stuff is wrong?
Yeah.
You had people saying that, well, we should take Russian property away from ordinary Russians or kick them out of our schools and things like that. I mean, they are literally becoming the exact thing that they're pretending to stand against or that they pretended to grow past.
It's truly amazing what's happened. I mean, now my mother, 77 years old, you know, has saying to me, son, watching your friends, watching, you know, all your other friends, because, you know, it's quite vast as a community. All of our channels grow, our audience get bigger, and now most of the responsibility to try to show some balance in the world falls on content creators that are just doing it to try to be helpful. Yet when we try to do that and use what hours we have left in the week outside of our wives and families and kids, I mean, we've bared this responsibility in some way. And what does it bring us? Well, it brings us a wall of a very scary wall of a side of media I've never seen.
Yeah.